7 books in 7 weeks. If you need book recommendations, I got you. So a little something about me is that I'm a huge fan of reading. As an activity and as a hobby, I think of it as something that's really peaceful, relaxing, and just calming overall. And a fun way to think about it is leveling up in real life through knowledge, learning about more information, learning about different ideas, and just getting more information into your brain and leveling up, becoming smarter and being more intelligent. Do y'all remember Pokemon? Pokemon? However you want to pronounce it. Pokemon, I think it stands for Pocket Monsters, originated in Japan, and it came over to North America in the 90s, super popular. Back when I was in elementary school, everyone was playing it. It was either the red version or the blue version, and it was all that we did as kids, right? I think of it as Pokemon. If you ever played that game before, then you know the analogy that I'm about to go with. Imagine that you're a Pokemon trainer, or imagine that you're a Pokemon yourself. Say you're a Jigglypuff. I don't know, you're a Jigglypuff. Reading books is like leveling up as a Jigglypuff so that you can go do Jigglypuff things, but in a better way. And if that isn't convincing you, the next time you find yourself being bored and not knowing what to do, don't just sit there and just stare at the wall. Instead, think back to this video and check out some of my recommendations. As a matter of fact, I will leave down below in the description box a link to each and every single one of the books that I recommend in the video. And yes, they are affiliate links, so if you click it and buy it, it'll help me out. A little bit, just a little bit, but it still helps. Every little bit counts and helps. Alright, so the first book that I'm going to be talking about is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. As a matter of fact, on this list, this is the only book that I have with me right now as a hard copy. But what this book is about is it's sharing the life and story of David Goggins. And if you don't know who David Goggins is, he's a badass individual. David Goggins is a Navy SEAL who runs ultra marathons like they're nothing. And if you don't know what an ultra marathon is, okay, so like the standard marathon is 20-something miles, right? An ultra marathon can be like 100 miles. This dude does it just because he wants to do it and he hates to do it. And I love that mentality. And so this book talks about his story and why he's able to go through the barrier. Because every runner knows what I'm talking about when I say when you hit the wall. When you're running, every runner will always run into a wall. Well, not all, but some. Most runners will run into the wall, at which point you physically feel like you can't go any further and your body's breaking down and it's telling you to quit. He shares with us how he's able to always go past that barrier, go past that wall through his life experiences and how that shapes his mentality, perspective, and attitude. This right here is one of the best motivational books I have ever read, and it's not even a motivational book. He doesn't even title it as such. He thinks of it as more of a memoir and what you can take away from it. But for me personally, what I took away from it is that it's an awesome motivation book. The next book is Our Revolution by Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont. Now, this book is really interesting to me for several reasons, but I think the biggest one is that I always dismissed Bernie Sanders back in the day, and I wrote him off by saying that his ideas weren't possible because other people told me that he was crazy, that he's old, and that it was past his time. And so I was just like, yeah, I took it in and I said, yeah, I guess I'll just go with that opinion as well. And I'm so glad that I gave Bernie Sanders a chance by reading his book because it goes into details why he fights the fight and why he does what he does. It goes into his humble beginnings, especially about how he was born and raised in an apartment in New York City. He and his family never had that much wealth, and he saw the economic injustice that entails. And so when he grew up, he attended Brooklyn College, transferred to the University of Chicago, graduated, and became a politician that was fighting the fight for the people. This book talks about necessary actions, game plan on how he's going to achieve increasing the minimum wage to $15, providing healthcare for everyone, similar to the model in Europe, and making tuition free at public colleges and universities. Now, before you dismiss Bernie Sanders as a crazy old dude, or as a socialist, or as a commie, or whatever you want to call him, just like how I did back in the day, please just give him a chance. Read this book. It'll change your mind on a lot of topics. It really changed my opinion on a lot of perspectives as well. Oh my goodness, my guppy is giving birth right now. This is amazing. Oh my God. So if you didn't know, I have a fish tank right here to my right, and I think it's to the left of your screen. She's giving birth right now, and it is awesome. She's so cute. But anyways, this book right here is the one that had the most impact on my life out of the 7 books that I read in the 7 weeks. This right here. If you don't get any other book on this list, this is the one you gotta check out. The next book on my list is A Change of Pace, because it's going to make you feel emotions like you've never felt before. And to be honest with you, it really made me feel grateful to be alive. Now, when I was reading this book, at the time I was sick and I was having a lot of self-pity and whatnot. But reading this book made me feel appreciative of my youth and of how much time I still have left on Earth. Because, hold on, let me tell you what it is. The book is called Tuesdays with Morrie, and it's by Mitch Albom. Now, the book centers around a relationship, a platonic relationship between Mitch, the student, and his professor, Morrie. Now, Morrie was Mitch's professor during his university days, and he was the professor to have the most impact on Mitch's life. But fast forward a few decades, they didn't keep in touch, and he finds out that Morrie was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. And if you don't know what that is, it's a terrible neurological disease where your body just degenerates. And I had the opportunity to do a project about the Lou Gehrig's disease in one of my neurobiology classes in university, and I know just how terrible it is. And because Morrie is diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, Mitch decides to reconnect with Morrie and to spend time with him. So what unfolds is this book. It's a recollection of all their last hangout sessions during Morrie's last few moments of life, and his wisdom and his guidance and his words that he wanted to tell to the world. And there's so much more that I can say about this book, but I do not want to ruin it for you. There's one thing I wanted to share with you in case one of you is listening to this, watching this right now, and you've already made the decision, I'm not gonna read that book, Amos. I just want to tell you one thing that really got me thinking. Now, Morrie was a huge advocate of having a living funeral. Instead of having people show up to his funeral when he's in his casket about to be buried, Morrie preferred that people came over to his house and had their remarks and their speeches and their farewell goodbyes while he was still alive and able to hear what they had to say. And so I'm a huge fan of the concept of a living funeral, and that is something I'm definitely going to implement in my own life when I become an old grandpa and I have my own funeral. I think that's a beautiful event in order to cherish the relationships that are in your life, especially during the last moments of your life. I highly recommend that book. Moving on to the next one. The next book on my list is The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang. Andrew is a presidential candidate for the 2020 election. He was the founder of Venture for America. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of like Teach for America, which is designated for teachers to go teach in urban cities. But in this case and purpose, it's for entrepreneurs straight out of college. And as a presidential candidate, he makes the case for Universal Basic Income, UBI, which is $1,000 every month to every American that's qualified. And Andrew is an advocate of universal basic income because he claims that in the future there's going to be a heavy loss of jobs due to robots, AI, and automation. Basically, this book talks about how robots will take over and humans will just be on the back burner, and it's kind of scary to think about, but it's also eye-opening. And this is one of the more interesting books that makes you think about the future, especially the progression of the human race and the Industrial Revolution. Because back then, when the Industrial Revolution began and factories were popping left and right, human hands were necessary and integral an ingredient to making it work. But these days, if you look at most warehouses and factories, robots are taking over. Case in point, when you went to McDonald's the last time, was there a big screen when you walked into the entrance that let you just order without interacting with the cashier? So this dude, Andrew, actually has a case in point. In the future, a lot of jobs are going to be taken over by robots. And this book talks about how as a human race, we can continue to survive when robots take over. But the Cliff Note version of this book is the Freedom Dividend, which is the universal basic income, $1,000 every month, equating to $12,000 a year to every American to combat the loss of jobs. It's a highly interesting read and I recommend it. Now I just want to say one quick disclaimer before I share with you my next book that I read in the past 7 weeks. Before you get mad at me, okay? The next book is titled Trump's America by Newt Gingrich. Now I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't go out of my way to read this book. It's one of those things where I was walking in the bookstore, I saw it, it caught my attention, so I picked it up, I sat down and I read the entire book front to back in one sitting. Essentially, in this book, Mr. Gingrich, the author of the book, makes a case for why President Trump is the best choice for America. And so he's kind of an apologist and a supporter of the Trump regime. Now, I like to be open-minded, and I certainly think there are pros and cons in every situation, and this book highlights all the pros. And so if you're curious at all on how America improved under President Trump, then this book is worth a read. The next book that I read is titled What Doesn't Kill Us by Scott Carney. The premise of this book is it's a real story written by an investigative journalist who likes to debunk myths and people that are just making things up. He loves to expose people. And so he stumbles upon Wim Hof that is shocking the world by breaking records upon what the human body can endure, such as how long he can hold his breath underwater, such as being submerged in ice cold water and surviving for a long freaking time, and all these different feats. And so Scott Carney follows Wim Hof and actually meets him, develops a relationship, tries to debunk him the entire time, but ends up becoming a follower of the Wim Hof method. And this book goes into details about how much the body can truly endure if you train it properly and if your mentality is set in tone in the right direction. And this book opens the conversation through Wim Hof about what is truly automatic in the human body and what we can control, especially things that we wrote off as just being fight or flight responses that the body automatically produces and does. Wim Hof and his followers prove scientists wrong by controlling their immune system, by controlling the parasympathetic system, by controlling all these automatic systems that the body is supposed to do unconsciously. To be honest, this book is kind of cool, and I don't mean that in a funny sense because it's all about how the cold is good for the body. But if you're not open-minded, I don't think you'll enjoy this book because the whole time you'll just be like, that's not possible, nuh-uh. But if you're open-minded and you're curious about how to take your body to the next level, this is the book for you, my friend. Alright, the next book is titled The Millionaire Next Door, The Surprising Secrets of America's Wealthy. This is a book that I truly believe should be on the summer reading list of every single high school student. But this is the stuff that they don't teach you in school about how to properly budget, about how to be financially responsible, about how to develop a credit score. Oh, that makes me so mad when they teach you such random topics that you'll never use ever again in the real world, and they don't bother teaching you about how to function as a responsible adult and avoiding getting into prison-like debt. Ooh, that gets me so heated. The curriculum of the education system is so twisted and outdated. Oh, they gotta be teaching students of how to be financially responsible. Oh, I'm a huge advocate of that. Anyways, now that I've calmed down, this book talks about the millionaires in America and how almost every single one of them are similar in their behavior and in their choices in life. Did you know that there are 3.5 millionaires in the United States, which is about 3.5% of the population? And the book pounds the idea that a lot of millionaires become wealthy and rich because they're frugal. Yes, the book talks about how there's a certain percentage of the wealthy class that inherited the money from their parents or their grandparents, but a bulk of millionaires that join that class every single year are actually just like you and me, normal everyday citizens. And so if you eventually want to become a millionaire in the future, this book might give you the guidance that you need to take the necessary action today to become a millionaire in the next 20, 30, 40 years. It's not going to happen overnight unless you win the lottery or something cool happens. But But it's gonna take patience, and this book will guide you on how to do it. And hey, before I end this video, I want to give you a bonus book that I really liked in the past 7 weeks. Now, it's not actually a book, but it's a movie that I watched that's titled The Green Book. You get it? It has the word book in the title, so I thought it was alright to say it. Okay, whatever. I really liked this movie. Now, if you don't know what The Green Book is, it was a travel guidebook for colored citizens of the United States during the segregation period, you know, when the Jim Crow laws were in effect. Ain't that messed up when you think about it? Just a handful of decades ago, based on the color of your skin, you couldn't even go to a certain bathroom or a hotel, or even in certain restaurants, just because you're black, brown, or yellow. Man, that's some crazy stuff. But anyways, this movie is a true depiction, a true story about a musician named Dr. Don Shirley, and about how he's from New York, right? And in the 60s, I believe, he went on a tour to the South. Now, if you know anything about the South in the 60s, it was not a quite friendly, hospitable place if you were a colored person. But anyways, he purposefully wanted to go on tour to the South to break barriers and to defy the expectations and the definition of a colored man. But he knew that by going down to the South, it wasn't exactly going to be safe for him because he's a colored individual. So he hires a really tough bodyguard from New York, a white dude, to accompany him through the South. This movie was hands down my most favorite film that I watched in 2019. I don't think, how many more months we got? We got 9 more months. I don't think no movie can top this one. So if you have time this weekend, check out The Green Book. But before I go, I just want to let you know that a few years ago, I made a video giving my recommendation for books during that era of my life. And that video is worth checking out as well. And as always, I'll talk to you next time, neighbor. Thanks for hanging out with me.